A number of months ago, Pope Francis declared this year the year of St. Joseph, when the Church Universal is encouraged to meditate and encourage devotion to St. Joseph, the spouse of Mary and the foster father of Jesus. Here in our parish, we dedicated earlier this week a new statue of St. Joseph, the worker. And that prayer of consecration of that statue, there's a beautiful introduction in the missal telling us why the Church lifts before us images of saints, of the Blessed Mother and of Jesus. The iconography of the Church has a deep and rich spiritual tradition going back to the very earliest days of the Church. The introduction says, images of saints and the Blessed Mother and of St. Joseph have four really specific purposes in the Church. The images can help aim us to heaven. We gaze at statues or at icons of images in the hope that they will transform our hearts with wonder and awe for all that God has created. Secondly, images can help us create unity in the Church. The use of images in the Church, of course, is based in the communion of the saints, that there is this connection between the living and the dead in the faith, and the unity with the saints helps us unify the Church as well. It also shows us the example of the saints. Wonderful example of St. Joseph, for example, or St. Teresa of Lisieux here. We have a statue of her right beside us here. And fourthly, the saints will be our intercessors in heaven. We bear before the saints our concerns in the hope that, again, through the communion of the saints, they will bear our concerns before the God of all life. So today I'd like to speak a little bit about our patron saint. We celebrated on Friday the feast of St. Joseph, and I'd like to set aside the lectionary today and spend just a few moments talking about St. Joseph, our patron saint. I didn't know until I read the new directory, the new photo directory, that this was originally called St. Patrick's Parish. And at some point in time, they changed the name before the building of this building to St. Joseph. So we have a wonderful tradition of this beautiful building, now just 100 years old, was dedicated to St. Joseph on its dedication day. St. Joseph appears only 4 times in the scriptures, and all in the very earliest chapters of Matthew and Luke. 50 verses at the beginning of Matthew are dedicated to the infancy narratives of Jesus, and 52 verses in Luke. Mark and John say nothing about Jesus' childhood and don't mention St. Joseph at all. Joseph appears 4 times. 4 times in the Bible, and only 4 times, and just a few lines in each instance. The first time, of course, is the problem pregnancy. The beginning of the story of Jesus' birth describes Joseph as the spouse of Mary. They're engaged, but they have not lived together. And so when Mary comes to Joseph and says, "I'm pregnant," he knows he is not the father. Now, in the ancient world, if a woman finds herself pregnant outside of marriage, it's the obligation of her betrothed's brothers to bury her up to her neck in sand and stone her to death. That was the custom in the ancient world, and is still the custom in part of the world today. Death was Mary's sentence. Joseph decides he's going to divorce her. Going to have nothing to do with it. He's not going to taint his reputation or his household with this unwelcome pregnancy. But an angel appears to him in a dream and tells him the story of who this child is. He gets up from the dream and he takes Mary immediately into his home. Joseph, the dreamer, who listens to the voice of an angel and welcomes this pregnant woman into his home. Then there's the amazingly difficult birth. The Roman emperor has insisted that the entire population of the empire be counted. It's kind of an act of ethnic cleansing or population control. Divide and conquer was the Roman way of dealing with things. Mary is 9 months pregnant. She must travel 90 miles from their home in Nazareth to Bethlehem, where Joseph's clan is from. Now, there's every woman who's had a child in this room can tell you more about how dangerous and difficult that would be at 9 months pregnant to travel either by foot or on the back of a donkey for 90 miles. The trip had to happen mostly at night so that the robbers and brigands would not come and attack them. Joseph leads Mary by the hand to Bethlehem. And then there's the scene of the birth, the humiliating experience of finding no place to stay. And so this pregnant woman and her husband find shelter only in a livestock corral. The text says once the baby is born, they lay him in a feed trough. It's cold. It's the desert night. It's unsanitary. And Mary does not have the company of the women of her family to help with the birth. Joseph is the midwife. Herod, an angry, manipulative, and nasty king, was very jealous of his power. He had put his brother to death because his brother was a threat to his authority. He even killed his 2 sons, married his brother's wife, a nasty piece of work. But when the wise men come and say, "We've come to worship the newborn king of the Jews," Herod is immediately threatened. Of course, who is this newborn king? The wise men hide from him, but he sends this message that every young child, every young boy in Bethlehem is to be put to the sword. And so Joseph, again, in a dream, an angel tells him to take the child and flee to Egypt, protecting this dreamer, the child, and his mother. The last time Joseph appears in the story is when Jesus gets lost in the Temple of Jerusalem. In the ancient Jewish world, when people were preparing for high holy days and journeying towards Jerusalem, they always prepared themselves spiritually before they left home. They would engage in men and women separately in ritual baths called a mikvah, and renouncing their sins and purifying themselves. And from that moment on until they get to the Temple of Jerusalem, they traveled separately. The men in one caravan, the women in a parallel caravan, only getting together to eat at the end of the day. So coming back in these 2 separate caravans, Mary must have thought that the boy was with his father, and the father must have thought that the boy is with his mother, because children could pass back and forth between the 2 groups. So when they stopped to eat and they discovered that the child is back in Jerusalem, it had to be a horrifying experience. Can you imagine any parent, the terror of losing a child for 3 days? 3 days they search for him. Joseph leads the search, and they find the child in the temple, and then Joseph leads the child back to Nazareth. What the text says, he was obedient to his parents. 4 times. 4 times. Several things for our own meditation that we can learn from these 4 stories. One of them reaches deeply back into the text of the Old Testament. The very first book of the Old Testament contains the story of another Joseph, the Joseph the patriarch. The story is made popular in Andrew Lloyd Webber's wonderful musical called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It's a very popular a play and a movie at one point in time. Joseph, too, was a dreamer, the patriarch, and his brothers hated him for it. And they decided they're going to kill him when he comes out to Dothan to visit them with the flocks. They plot to kill him. And Reuben intercedes and says, let's sell him instead to this group of Ishmaelite travelers who are going down into Egypt. So they sell him into slavery. This dreamer, this boy, the favorite son of his father. But out of Egypt, Joseph continues his dreams, and he becomes a favorite of the Pharaoh. And when a drought comes, he's able to protect the Egyptian people from starvation. And Joseph's own brothers come down to him in Egypt. Out of their sin, out of their manipulative, egotistical response to their favorite brother, their father's favorite son, they plot to kill him and sell him into slavery. And from that sin, God makes grace happen for them. The same thing can happen for us. That sometimes, out of struggle and out of suffering and darkness, God can make grace happen for us. He did it with Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, who protected the Christ child in times of trouble for us. The message of Jesus comes to us through Joseph's protective hand. We are called to be individuals who protect the dreams of others. Joseph is the patron saint of husbands and fathers. It's important for us to recognize this and to especially establish a way to train our sons how to be good husbands and good fathers. Joseph protected his family from trouble. When he was tempted to cut and run, he stayed and protected. I wish to speak directly to every husband and every father in this room. Like Joseph, keep trouble away from your families and out of your home. It's your divine obligation. Don't bring trouble into your homes because of your own egos or your own ill-founded dreams or your power. Your job is to keep trouble away from your wives and your children, not to bring it to them. Teach your sons how to keep trouble away from your homes, your grandsons as well. Make sure that your dreams are born of God and not of your own ego or desire. The Catechism of the Church describes the saints as this great starry bridge that connects us, the living, with the dead, and that wonderful communion of saints that we profess every Sunday in the Creed. Joseph is our patron in this parish. He's our saint. And we, as members of St. Joseph's Parish, should especially take part of Joseph's life and his example to our hearts and live that example with great grace and devotion. His story should be part of our story. Now, for 100 years in this beautiful building dedicated to the memory of this holy man, we stand in this moment as individuals who should be enfleshing in our way of living the memory of our patron saint. Joseph intercedes for his people, his friends, his family. He stands in the breach. Pray to Joseph, asking him to intercede, I beg you, for your families and your friends. My grandmother always used to say a little prayer to St. Joseph when she'd leave her house and lock the door. Protect this house for me, Joseph. He can be the strength of this parish. St. Joseph, friend of sinners. St. Joseph, protector of the Christ child. St. Joseph, faithful spouse of the Virgin. St. Joseph, example to all who labor. St. Joseph, pray for us.